Thank you, Presiding Officer. One of the great achievements of the Scottish economy in recent years has been the dramatic uplift in our exports. But of course, Scotland has been an exporting nation for a very long time. I remember standing on the shores of Lake Titicaca looking at the ferry from Peru across to Bolivia, built on the Clyde. I visited the biggest Buddha in the world, which is just outside Rangoon in Burma. It sits in a frame that proudly says manufactured in Kilmarnock. And everywhere you go in the world, you find bottles of whisky waiting an appreciative audience to drink them. So our exporting credentials are long established and continue to be an important part of our economy and to grow. And for many of my constituents and of colleagues in the North East, we export our skills based on the experience of the oil and gas industry. And whatever the vicissitudes of short-term difficulties, that will undoubtedly continue. But one of the things I'm most delighted of is that we're no longer exporting people in any substantial sense. It's quite ironic that the new memorial to the clearances that is at Helmsdale, which has the little child holding his mother's hand, looking back down the glen to the place they will never see again, is within sight, of course, of the oil field just off the coast, the Beatrice field, which has, of course, been a pioneer in the offshore wind industry. Now, the wind industry is going to be an important part of our future. Harbours in my constituency, at Buckie, at Fraserburgh and at Peterhead, want to get some of the action from the offshore wind. But the UK government's dithering, delay and damaging changes in the regime put at risk these new jobs, which are long-term sustainable. Even when oil has ceased to be part of our economy, they will be important to us. It's worth saying, of course, that I've heard some interesting things in the debate. It's always a great pleasure to hear Neil Findlay speak, if only for the excitement of watching him wrestle with his own internal contradictions in the arguments he puts forward, and wondering which side of him is going to win. Because, of course, when he criticises the suggestions that Scotland should, as Northern Ireland is before the general election, have control over corporation tax, he of course ignores the fact that Gordon Brown has cut corporation tax more often than anyone. Clearly, he's been criticising Gordon Brown, and therefore I can only assume that Mr Findlay is, of course, a Blairite. In my remaining 60 seconds, let me just touch upon also what Mr Findlay was saying about employment. I'm delighted to hear him arguing for our having full power over employment law. I will join him campaigning on that on every opportunity. His recent campaigning against that was not too good. Let me just conclude, Presiding Officer, by addressing the issues that Jackie Bailey talked about. She seemed to celebrate the drop in oil prices, although, of course, the price that we're talking about that the UK government had from the Department of Energy and Climate Change is exactly the same as the one that the Scottish government used. And we hear that in a year's time we'll be back to the same place. The long-term future for oil is as a feedstock for our chemical industries. We've got to get off burning it. That's certainly important. Presiding Officer, I look forward to future prosperity and growth in our economy.